This is an Irish independent podcast.
So it's major number 3 of this very interesting golfing season upon us. US Open in June at Oakmont. We're on the East Coast, just outside Pittsburgh. We're talking Oakmont, so we're talking proper golf, scary golf, men from the boys' golf. We are back to a US Open where level par is a very good score. This is old school DNA invoked. Now, they say one good test of a course is its winners list, and in that respect, Oakmont can rest very easy. Ben Hogan, 1953, with Sam Snead second. Then it was Jack Nicklaus in 62, with Arnold Palmer second. In 73, so famously, Johnny Miller with that mythical final round 63, a US Open record which stood for 50 years. Larry Nelson joined the list in 83. In 1994, it was Ernie Els, then in 07, Angel Cabrera with Tiger Woods, second place. And then the last US Open here was in 2016. Dustin Johnson, who was then really peak of his powers, your winner on 4 under par. So you get the picture. No duds allowed. It is not possible to cheat Oakmont. Now, 9 years ago, behind Dustin Johnson, of course, just 3 other players finished under par. One of them was Shane Lowry. And you might remember it was a very painful Sunday for Shane. He had a 4-shot lead going into the final round and shot 6 over par. One of those horrible, cruel days of golf for him. Clearly shook and a little heartbroken, he spoke to the media afterwards.
Bitterly disappointed standing here. It's not easy to get yourself in a position I got myself in today. And I was there for the taking and I didn't take it. But you can only learn from your mistakes. I always say it's only a mistake if you don't learn from it. So I'm sure I learned a lot from today. I don't know what it is yet, but when I'm in that position again, and I know I will be, I'll handle it probably a little bit better.
That was Shane in 16 on Sunday. Never were words more prescient. He returns in 25, an Open champion, major winner. Speaking this month, he remembered his first impressions of Oakmont back in 2016. It was a practice round the week of the tournament.
First time I played Oakmont was the Sunday before the US Open in 2016, and I went out to play and my coach was with me, and we teed off on 10 and we got around to 14, which is up beside the clubhouse, and I walked in and I sat there in the locker room going, I have no idea how I'm going to play golf around this place. And then 6 days later I had a 4-shot lead going into the final round.
Pretty unusual, obviously, for a guy to walk in off a practice round.
It wasn't that I felt like I couldn't play it, but I was just like, this is too hard, I'm going in. You know what I mean? It was like, it was one of those. And honestly, if it didn't rain, I remember it rained on Wednesday and Thursday that week. If it didn't rain that week, God knows what the winning score would have been.
We are expecting some rain this week, but it's not going to be a sodden, dead course either. We are also expecting crazy high, thick rough. We're seeing the videos coming through on social media from players and caddies. Lots of bunkers at this course, huge greens with big undulations. You're going to see lots of 3-putts, lots of pain, lots of angry golfers. There is even a par 3, which is 300 yards long. Now, that's a driver and a wedge for you and me, but even the pros aren't mad about it.
It's probably going to be a wood for most players. It's, it is what it is. Is it going to be the greatest par 3 we'll ever play? Probably not. But, it is what it is, and it's going to be on the scorecard, and we need to play.
So that's Larry, has form around here, and is in very good form. Plenty of Sundays lately in contention on the PGA Tour. He was in contention at the Masters. There is something brewing around Shane Lowry, it feels like. Something good. If the vibes around him are positive, they are strangely not when it comes to Rory McIlroy. As he departed Augusta National 2 months ago, the world anticipated a dream summer for Rory. Instead, it has just been odd. His US PGA is remembered for non-conforming driver leaks and a media blackout. He's talked about a lack of motivation post-Masters. And then after skipping Jack's tournament, with new driver in the bag, he played in Canada last week. Generally a very happy hunting ground for him. And he missed the cut on 9 over par. He was 5th to last in the field. And Rory, in his post-round interview on the Friday, going home for the weekend, was not inclined to write off that Friday 78 as no big deal.
Yeah, of course it concerns me. You don't want to shoot high scores like the one I did today. still, I felt like I came here obviously with a new driver, thinking that, that sort of was going to, be good and solve some of the problems off the tee, but it didn't. So, and obviously going to Oakmont next week, what you need to do more than anything else there is hit fairways. So, still sort of searching for the sort of missing piece off the tee. And obviously for me, when I get that part of the game clicking, then everything falls into place for me. But right now that isn't. And, that's a concern going into next week.
It is a concern. Oakmont, very scary with the fragile driving game. There is no graduated rough this year, so off the fairways is brutal. Rory promised lots of practice at home over the weekend, so we'll see. But right now, it all feels a little bit soon after the high of Augusta. However, all that said, for a man in need of feel-good vibes and a spark, maybe the USGA have provided it. 7:40am Thursday, Rory McIlroy will tee off with Shane Lowry. Also with him, the man who finished second to Rory at the Masters, their Ryder Cup teammate Justin Rose. There are worse groups to be in, for sure. So we'll see. There is one man to beat. Not since Tiger Woods has there been such a dominant force on the golfing scene. Scottie Scheffler won the US PGA, second major of the season at Quail Hollow. He won it by 5 shots, by the way, without his A-game. He did not play especially well all week. 2 weeks ago, he won the Memorial Jack Nicklaus's event, an elevated event. It didn't feel like his heart rate was elevated. Scottie is producing rock-solid, scary good golf. It won't last forever, it never does, but right now, it's dispiriting for the rest. Golf is not a sport which should be dominated by anyone. It is a game with a deep field and tiny, tiny, tiny margins. So he is probably right now the most underrated sportsman in the world, Scottie Scheffler. Nobody at the moment, maybe with the exception of John Ram, looks to be in good enough form to stop him this week. But golf is golf, and one man should never be tipped against the field. We'll talk to Brian Keogh, who's in Oakmont for the paper all week, and with us in studio, Conor McKeon, as Scottie Scheffler goes for his second major of the year.
It's going to be a drop shot, but it's an emphatic victory for sensational Scottie Scheffler. It was hard work for sure, with this major number 3 for him. And he's halfway to the Grand Slam.
And Conor McKeon is with us. Hi.
Hi, Joe.
US Open. You a fan of these things generally?
Oh, yeah. I think this is the major that, I suppose, the most chaos at, potentially. And most years, maybe the least predictable as well, although, certain forces have changed that situation this week because there's one guy who was playing so much better than everybody else in the field. And I can't remember, it's been a while since I think there was quite so much talk about the course. I know in the US Open, there's always, this very kind of narrow line between, trying to identify the best golfers in the world and trying to kind of humiliate them. But, if it fulfills its brief this week, I think Oakmont is going to be as much a team and a factor and a talking point as any of the golfers and what they actually do.
So I have a list of kind of luminaries of the game who know their golf. Johnny Miller, the most difficult test of golf in America. Phil Mickelson, the hardest golf course we've ever played. Bryson DeChambeau, this doesn't challenge your game, it challenges your sanity. Tiger Woods, who finished second in 2007, by far the most difficult greens I've ever played. Sam Snead joked, I put down a coin to mark my ball and the coin rolled away. Interestingly, it was upon seeing Gene Sarazen take a putt on an Oakmont green in 1935 that a fella called Edward Stimson said, I should really measure how fast this green is. And from that moment, we had the stimp meter.
Right, didn't know that.
Now, bring that to your pals on a Friday in the pub and come back to me. Blown away. A man who was at the course is, of course, as always, Brian Keogh, and he's with us now. Brian, you can hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Joe.
So, Oakmont gets the big billing. What's it like in person?
Yeah, look, it's just a really storied venue. The old green clubhouse. The old guys are all sitting out the back on the veranda, looking at the guys putting on the putting green, making comments and smart comments and jokes, and slagging them off a little bit. They're really looking forward to putting them through a bit of pain. That's what they want here, as all members clubs do. They want to see them suffer. So it's a real old school Just a classic US Open venue. It's the third time I've been here. It was here in '07 when Cabrera was peak Cabrera winning, and back in 2016 when Dustin Johnson obviously won, and Shane had a great chance. So it's a super venue. You know, you're Rust Belt America. It's almost like going into the deer hunter in a way when you're driving to the course. You're through those little villages and those back roads and the steel mills and all around there. So it's just got a real American feel about it, and it's a classic. It's a classic golf course as well.
Yeah. Recent scores at US Open: Bryson and Rory last year, Pinehurst kind of 6 under territory. LACC, where again Rory went very close against Wyndham Clark, that was more 10 under. We had Matt Fitzpatrick at Brookline when he held off Zalatoris, that was 6. John Ram at Torrey Pines, 6. Bryson at Winged Foot, that was 6. And I guess the last kind of un-US Open-like score was Gary Woodland at Pebble, 13. So Dustin Johnson managed -4 and 16, as you would remember well, Brian. What are they talking about out there this time around?
Yeah, well, look, you know, it depends on who you talk to. I mean, if you'd played the course last week and a few of the guys came up sort of last Monday and said it was just absolutely impossible, and then the rain came down, and they've had more rain here since records began in 1870 something, you know, so the place got absolutely hammered by the rain, you know, late last week. So it's taken a lot of the sting out of the course because, you know, it's on a hill. It's sort of there's a motorway going straight through the middle of the turnpike, as it's called. So everything slopes down towards that on either side of the course. So there's a lot of sloping fairways, big sloping greens, but had a little bit of the sting taken out of them by the rain. So it's not quite as fast as it was. So you know, there might be decent enough scoring for the first couple of days as it sort of dries out. But yeah, as you say, Dustin Johnson was 4 under, or as he said himself, well, maybe 5 under if he hadn't had that one shot penalty for the ball moving on the green on the 5th. So you know, it's still going to be anything around par is going to be, you know, have a great chance this week. You'd have to think.
Yeah, it's funny, Conor. You can talk a lot about a US Open course in advance. You see the videos invariably of Tyrrell Hatton losing his mind when ball drops into rough and carnage is promised. And then quite often these guys surprise you and it's not as terrible as forecasted. So I'm always a little wary of predicting carnage. One thing which did catch my ear, though, is that the course superintendent was saying no graduated rough this year. So the moment you're off a fairway, you're in really, really deep, horrible stuff. And I guess with these greens, which are very, very difficult, big undulations, fast, we're going to have lots of 3-putts. That kind of has me hopeful we may get some tears out there across Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, and I often find that the build-up to the US Open, a lot of the times, like in as much as people are talking about who's going to win and who's on form and what, you know, the significance of a particular player winning is, I think we all get a little bit giddy at the prospect of watching these guys struggle. And then when it happens, sometimes it can go like the Shinnecock in 2018 being the prime example when, you know, if you remember, Phil Mickelson ran after a putt that went past the hole on 13 and hit it while it was still moving. So I think the kind of trope that they use is the USGA lost the course. They lost control of the course. They made it too hard, too fast.
Are they not everyone's favourite US Opens now?
I think they are, but I still think there has to be some rhyme or reason to watching it. You know, if you hit a perfect shot and you hit it to the perfect part of the green and you strike the ball correctly, it's, you know, like for it to make sense even to watch as a sporting occasion, you know, you need good shots rewarded. I think that's just the prerequisite. If it turns into a crazy golf course, then when it's sort of random and you know you try and hit it in the general direction of the green and just hope for a kindly bounce, there's an element of fun, but I think it wears off pretty quickly. And as I said, like you still want to see the best golfer in the field. Like other than your favourite, I think you still want to see the guy who plays the best over the course of the week win the tournament, because you know it is huge. I know in this part of the world we always think of the Masters as being the premier major of the three that are held in America, but like this is a national open and it has as much kind of tradition as any of the rest of them.
Yeah. So Brian, I guess we should start with Shane Lowry, because obviously he has form here back in 16 and he has form of late as well on the PGA Tour. So I was casting my mind back to Dustin Johnson in 2016, and it's probably still painful for Lowry to think of the fact that he went out 7 under par on the Sunday, 4 shots clear of Dustin Johnson. Even if he'd managed to shoot 2 over, he would have won the tournament. His reflections on the day, maybe they've changed with the passage of time, but on the day I watched his post-round interview and he was sort of like, he was heartbroken, a bit almost spooked, and he sort of said, I actually didn't hit terrible shots. I just hit lots of okay shots and it was a slow bleed.
Yeah, I mean, he was really devastated that Sunday afternoon. People sort of saying to him, well, you have to lose one to win one, and he couldn't really see that at all. But he kind of admitted this morning that, look, it stood to me. What I learned that day. Obviously, he was 9 years, younger back then, not as much experience. He's 9 years older now and has won an Open Championship. But he was, he just couldn't, produce the goods coming down the stretch on the back nine on Sunday. It was a couple of 3-putts in there, a couple of, decisions that he probably regretted. He was walked away with a lot of regrets about it. But I think since then he's come on so much as a player that I think he's taken a lot from that. But he's also pointing out that, hey, look, just because I played well here the last time doesn't mean I'm going to play well here this time. But we look at the way he's playing, especially his tee to green play and his iron play this year and the last couple of years has been, tremendous. That was what really won Dustin Johnson this, back in 2016. He said it was his driving, but he was first for greens and reg, and the same for Shane Lowry at the moment. So he's coming in here with a lot of confidence. Says it's not the most daunting course he's ever played. He said he felt Pinehurst was more daunting for him last year, so he likes the look of it, and he likes the fact, as Conor was referring to, that good shots are rewarded. It's not tricked up. The Mike Davis years of the US Opens and Shinnecock and the disasters they've had with setups over the years, then those days are gone now. So it's going to be a fair test. It's going to be a really tough test. It's just relentless. From 1 to 18, there isn't really a let up anywhere at all, and the fairways, while they look wide, on television, they're quite narrow in where you can land the ball in terms of, the cambers. So, Shane is in a very good place. I watched him play 9 holes with Rory this morning, and, he looked pretty good.
And I was curious as to how he's feeling about this season, Brian, because as you said, he's playing really, really well. If you look at the stats on tour, his approach to green, he's second best on tour. Tee to green, second best on tour. Like, he's become a remarkably good ball striker. His putting is 103rd, but that can mean you're streaky good and streaky bad, and that's okay too. Masters in contention, but finished very disappointing 42nd from where he was. The truest, obviously he was so close. It was an 18-hole duel and he came out the wrong side. The Canadian Open Sunday, briefly, really in contention with a lightning start on Sunday, but finished tied 13th. Quail Hollow, you give him a pass because he, as he announced to everyone, he hates the place. So is he feeling good about things, or is he a bit beaten up, or where is he?
Yeah, he's been coming off the golf course beaten up quite a lot. He was just telling us this morning about, you phone home, and even his daughter now is aware of, how he's playing and watching the golf. And he's had a few lumps. He's taken a few lumps. He's been in a few final groups. He's obviously had a couple of runner-up finishes, and he's frustrated that he's played so well and hasn't got a win. He says, look, I don't want to win every week. I don't want to win every tournament, but I wouldn't mind winning a couple. Yeah. So he's, he really feels he's due, and he's just waiting for his week to come. And, it could be this week. He just says, as I always say, if I hole up few putts, I'll be dangerous, and that's just it with Shane. He gives himself so many chances. It looks like he's not maybe putting as well as other guys. He does occasionally miss the odd short one, but I just think if he's striking the ball and continues striking the ball as well as he does, he's going to have a chance this weekend. And he says himself, if he puts anyway well, or even average to well, I think he'll have a great chance of winning this weekend. He's anxious. He's on edge a little bit. That way you want to be going into a major. He's not overconfident, and he's just it's on and around the greens really has been the difference between winning and not winning this season, because everything else has just been good. So a good week on the greens, and I'd expect to see Shane Lowry up there, but who knows?
Yeah. What are you seeing, Conor?
Yeah, he's interesting to watch now because, our perception of golfers is totally warped around here because of Rory McIlroy. He is a sort of once in a lifetime athlete. But most of the guys who get in around the top 20, like Shane Lowry does tend to have a fairly short shelf life. And as you said, he's second strokes gained tee to green. The guy who's first is like a phenomenon. So, like, what he's playing really, really big boy golf. And I would say the frustration that he has is knowing that he's not going to be putting himself in contention forever. You know, the level of consistency required to stay there. You know, you see even a golfer like Justin Thomas, you know, he kind of comes in and out. Patrick Cantlay, same thing. So I think he really wants to put another one of these away. But he is a big game player, and I wouldn't be remotely surprised if he put himself in there. The issue that I have, or so the issue that kind of jumps off the television to me, is that when he is in contention and he does make a mistake, he finds it very hard to recover. He finds it very hard to forgive himself. He finds it very hard to kind of process it. And he can't, you know, it's a very hard thing to do. He's very emotive that way. And it can kind of snowball. And like, in a way, it's kind of interesting because he's a guy now who I'm sure the kind of paycheck at the end of the week doesn't mean a whole pile to anymore. It's all about getting the wins. And it's almost like when the win kind of goes out of sight or something like that, he nearly, you know, he not that he loses interest, but he can't kind of get it together to finish 6th as opposed to 16th. But he is a big game player, and just watching some of the practice sessions, he hits that fade off the tee, and I think if he hits fairways this week, like Brian said, his irons are so good and so consistent, he'll put himself in the frame.
Brian, the last one on Shane and his temperament, because obviously patience required at the US Open. Like, it's the great misnomer that he's big cuddly teddy bear, you know, and I think most people are aware of that at this stage. I mean, I remember even being at Royal County Down at an Irish Open, and like, he broke his putter on the course, you know what I mean? That's always been there, and we're seeing that frustration at times when it's not going his way of late. Do you think is he hotter? Is there more heat to him on the course now than there's ever been? Like, it doesn't seem like that temperament is easing.
No, and it's funny. I actually asked him about that today when he came off after 9 holes. He didn't really like the question. I said, "Look, do you not feel that maybe you're a bit hard? It's a tough game. You're getting beaten up. Getting close, getting beaten by Rory in Pebble Beach when you play fantastically well. And then when things don't go your way, you get a bad break. You're very, very hard on yourself." And he said, "Look," he said, "I wouldn't be where I am if I wasn't like that." He's just that's just the way he is. He says, a lot of guys are like that out there, and I was saying, what about Scottie Scheffler? He says, yeah, just see Scottie Scheffler earlier this year, how down he was getting on himself, how much he was losing the rag. It's great when you're winning every second week, but, he doesn't think it's a problem. He sort of said, look, the camera's on you for 10 seconds, then it moves away. I can move on to the next shot. So, it seems to drive him. He feels he needs to do it, let off steam that way. He's a very competitive animal, and I think he's matured as a golfer as well. I think he'd be ready for that back nine. If you could go back and play 2016 again, I think he'd have given Dustin Johnson a run for his money that time. So yeah, that fire is there, and he just says it's because I have had a taste of it. That's the reason why he gets so frustrated. He's had a taste. He knows how good it feels. He wants that again, and maybe this will be the week, he said. Maybe this will be the week.
Okay. Yeah. Well, look, it's a fair response on his part. I guess everybody very excited here when you saw the draw. Thursday, 7:40 a.m. We know where you'll be. Lowry, McIlroy and Justin Rose as well. So that seems like a great draw for everyone.
Yeah, perfect draw. Ryder Cup, European Ryder Cup guys. Obviously, Rory and Shane played this morning. They're playing again tomorrow. And then they're playing, Thursday and Friday. So, that, as you said, we're fed up at the side of each other. But yeah, there's some great draws. Got Spieth, Ram and Dustin Johnson. Yeah, that's a beautiful draw as well. And Rory, Shane and Rose and Xander, Bryson and Jose Luis Baez there as well. So, three, some nice marquee groups.
So, fascinated for your thoughts on Rory, both of you, because this is just not the summer we'd expected after he left Augusta National. He finished up in Canada with that quadruple bogey, a double, 4 other bogeys, missed the cut, first time missing the cut since Troon last year. But moreover, Brian, it's just, he's talking about the driver, and that's a big concern. He's talked about a lack of motivation and having to reset. It's probably just not the kind of freewheeling, happy mood we'd all expected.
Isn't it funny? I remember thinking, after he won the Masters and we were, there was talk of the Rory Slam and can he win the PGA at Quail Hollow, and Oakmont will suit him and Port Rush will suit him. And now we're sort of wondering, what Rory McIlroy is going to turn up on Thursday. I think when you achieve what Rory achieved at the Masters, the come down after that has to be tremendous. The crash, I think he's dealing with that as well. What am I going to do now? I've done everything I want to do in the game. So he's trying to get his head around that. That's probably going to take, a lot of time. I remember when Michael Campbell won the US Open, and he had a great quote about, when you scale your Everest, more people are killed coming down off Everest than there are going up, So, I think Rory is, sort of on that sort of descent from his own Everest, and is looking for, well, what's the next peak I'm going to have to scale? I wouldn't be too worried about the driver thing. And he played okay this morning. He didn't hit a huge number of drivers, but he hit quite a few of them in the fairway, putting very well. Looked very relaxed with Shane. So, he's had 6 top 10s in the US Open the last 6 years, runner up the last 2. So I think this will get his attention this week. And I think we'll see a bit of a better performance than we've seen in the last couple of weeks. Not sure exactly what the story is with the driver. We'll hear from now at 1:00, whether he's gone back to that old model or is gone for the new one, or if he's found something that'll work from. But he's in an interesting spot after doing what he did at the Masters, and I'd expect him to put in a decent performance here.
It's possibly a hard question to answer. I'm sure you're not privy to the details of his contract with TaylorMade. I presume, though, he can't be under some kind of crazy obligation to use the newest model so that hackers like us will go and buy it. I presume he has wiggle room there.
Yeah, I think there would be a little bit of wiggle room. Obviously, they'd prefer and they'd like, to him to use the latest thing. Maybe he used the Canadian Open as a little bit of a practice run. Well, let's take it out this week and see how it goes. Didn't work out. Wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to that model that, that was non-conforming at the PGA, but, that model of TaylorMade driver that he uses. So, I think obviously TaylorMade's up for sale at the moment as well. And, there's all sorts of commercial reasons behind these things as well. And you're a big star, you want them using your equipment and doing well with it. So there might be pressures there. Who knows? Yeah. But we'll hear from him later on. Anyway, but he looked good this morning. I have to say, he looked pretty good. Missed a few greens here and there, but very relaxed. And the putter is working well. And these greens, Joe, they look big, but they just want to repel the ball all the time and into the rough, and they are scary. They're ferocious.
Right. What are you seeing with them, Conor?
I don't know. It's a bizarre follow up to the Masters. Maybe it was predictable in some ways, but just on his game, everything comes from his driver. That is the source of his kind of superpower. And when he drives it straight, he hits it so long. You can see when he hits a fairway, his body language, he bounds up the fairway after it. And when he hits the rough, he's more kind of slump-shouldered. So he's very expressive, like Shane Lowry is in a way too. And if he hits the first couple of fairways and he's looking to find something that he has. So it's not as if he has to, remodel his game or anything. And a fella like that, you imagine that, you're never too far away from it. So the theory that all the major venues this year could suit him still holds. It's going to need whoever wins this week is going to be long and straight off the tee, and nobody is longer off the tee than Rory McIlroy. The question is whether he's going to be straight, and that it could be that simple. I heard some of the previews this week, a lot of people talking about the value of lag putting. It's very rare that you hear that being emphasised as being a big deal in one of these tournaments, but because the greens are so big, and because they're so fast, if you go past the hole, you can go miles past. And that's a thing that Rory is really good at as well. He doesn't get a whole pile of credit for it because, obviously the more eye-catching aspects of his game. But, if it comes down to, a put-off between Scottie Scheffler and Rory McIlroy, that's probably the one area I'd be backing Rory to win it.
Yeah. I can't think of too many times where Irish guys have gone out together. Brian, the most memorable example I had of recent times was when Phil won the PGA and Lowry and Harrington had a grand old time kind of sailing into top 5 territory on the Sunday.
Yes. Indeed, no, I can't recall. I can't remember Padraig when he won a Carnoustie. I think Paul McGinney might have been playing just behind him, but no, I can't think of it in the majors. Certainly in recent times, certainly Rory and Shane played together at Bay Hill. the first couple of days. Rory, Shane went very well there, but it's a nice draw. It's a nice draw for them. But as Shane says, it's so hard out there. There'll be no chit chat. It's nice to be with a couple of guys you get along with, but familiar and great for TV and great for us. But no, I think it's a nice draw, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing how they go. And talking about Rory and his driving.
Yeah.
I mean, they're off the 10th, so it'll be an iron off the tee down the 10th for Rory. Hit 1 mile down the 10th today with an iron and a 3-wood off the 11th. So we probably won't see the driver for a few holes.
Okay. And by the way, sorry, we will not spend any time on this. Trust me, I want to move on. But just that whole non-conforming leak and the strangeness of it. Obviously, his great frustration is that his name was leaked, and he was not the only golfer whose driver didn't pass the mustard. When you were on property, did all of the journalists know that week, or had you got word, well, Scottie Scheffler had failed as well, like before his Sunday press conference?
Heard later in the week. I mean, heard actually early in the week that Rory, had changed driver on Tuesday, but there's no, it's not unusual for a guy to change his driver, but we didn't know that he'd failed that test until it came out through Sirius XM. And from their point of view, I mean, they could have put a bit more context around what they put out there, saying, well, look, X number of guys were tested and he wasn't the only one that was tested. But social media jumped on it, and then all of a sudden, people felt obliged to go with this story. So it was a little bit unfair on Rory, but to point the finger at the press for leaking. I mean, look, these things come out through caddies, through officials, in all sorts of ways all the time, and they'll be testing, they'll be testing today. They'll be tested today, so it'll be interesting to see, if any more. I mean, Xander Schauffele's name was leaked, if you want to use that expression, at the Open, in Port Rush the last time we were up there as well. He was very annoyed. So it'll be interesting to see how the drivers are on the limit. They really are. So it's going to happen more and more often. But I can understand his annoyance that his name was out there, and he probably heard, in the locker room that that Scottie had his driver had failed as well. But we didn't hear any other names.
Yeah, okay.
Which is interesting. But I'm sure they'll be at the USGA are here, obviously, running their own event. So it'll be interesting to see how many drivers fail this week.
I guess we can't ignore Scheffler too much longer. 3 wins from his last 4 starts. The stats support the results. Just you combine all stats on the PGA Tour, he's number 1 on tour. Off the tee, he's number 1 on tour. His driving at Memorial Jack's tournament was kind of outrageous, really. He's not super long, like his average drive is 298 yards. That puts him 46th on tour for length, but the accuracy is astounding. He's pretty much eliminated the right-hand rough. And then, of course, his approach to green, he is first by a distance, nearly 2.5 shots better per round than average with an iron in his hand. And then putting about 25th, which, I guess, Conor, it's kind of like that thing we used to say about Rory. If his putting is anyway okay, he'll be really difficult to beat. This is, as close to Tiger versus the field territory as we have ever been. And maybe John Ram the exception. Nobody here looks in the right kind of form to go at him the way they need to.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like the Masters was for Rory when we were saying, look, Rory's going here in form, and the 2 most obvious challengers would have been Scottie Scheffler and Xander Schauffele, and both of them were coming back off injuries and hadn't played particularly well. So Rory was going to the Masters as the man, but there's no doubt who the man is here. And of all the tournaments, the US Open will, if the course plays the way we're kind of expecting it to, even nearly the way you're expecting it to, it's like the old Brooks Koepka thing about why do you win so many majors? Well, these guys can't win because you're dwindling the field down to a very, very small number of people. And within that small number of people, Scottie Scheffler is by far and away in the best form out of all of them. So sometimes it's as basic as that. Like the only real arguments you could make against him, however much sort of weight you put in them, is he's never won a US Open before. And he's not, as you said, a great putter, and the greens would be incredibly fast here.
Yeah.
But we're grasping for straws.
Yeah. Brian, you've basically seen every elite golfer hit a golf ball for the last 25 plus years. You have an unbelievable memory bank here to fall back on. Scheffler on a driving range or on a golf course, would he stand out the way he strikes the ball? I mean, we can see the swing on TV and we can see shot tracer, so we have a sense of how he plays. Is there anything about the way he pures the ball, the sound, the flight that would make him stand out? Because we've heard him just be described as unimpressively impressive as well by Shane Lowry at times.
Yeah, I think Shane hit the nail on the head there. You're looking at the foot movement and all the rest of it. The swing is obviously not as pretty as some of the other great ball strikers that we've seen over the years. But you just with Scheffler, you just look at where the ball finishes. With those iron shots, it's pin high all the time. It's the right shape into the the safe part. It's Jack Nicklaus. More so than Tiger. Well, Tiger played that way too. It's just the relentless distance control is just so good. Is his tactical awareness, just where, but on the range, obviously, it's just not the same as watching, Rory, just absolutely send it on the driving range. It's just so impressive to watch. Or even, Dustin Johnson here in 2016 was so impressive to watch that easy power that he has. Scheffler not quite as powerful, but it's the course management. It's the distance control. He gets annoyed. He gets annoyed like Shane gets annoyed. He's not cool, calm, and collected, but he does seem to have a way of focusing and not compounding mistakes and just hitting the ball exactly the right distance all the time.
Yeah,
and that precision is just going to be just so key here. If he hits the ball anyway straight at all, I think he's going to be very hard to beat.
Yeah, relentless is a good word. And there was the amazing stature in the USPGA whereby, and it'll be very pertinent here, the field
backability.
Yeah, field 18% of the time. Paul McGinley had the stat on the TV. 18% of the time, the field will bounce back from a bogey with a birdie or better. And Scheffler at the USPGA did it 67% of the time he made a bogey. Like, honestly, I'm crying for the next 3 holes when I make a bogey, and I'm not a professional. Like, I can't get my head around this.
I know. It's funnily enough, that stat sometimes, you can have a debate about it. Golf courses are designed, you've got a tough hole, and then quite often you'll have a fairly easy or an easier hole, straight after one of the tougher holes you're likely to bogey. So, guys quite often make a birdie after making a bogey on a tough hole. But, Scheffler's ability to just water off a duck's back and, refocus is quite remarkable. He's got a great attitude and a great caddy as well. He just seems to think so well about the game, and he's just very impressive. He does everything so well. Might not be the most exciting guy to hear talk about the game sometimes, but it's just the way his mind seems to work. He just keeps things very simple, one shot at a time, the old cliches, and just doesn't hit very many bad shots, does he?
No. Look, invariably, at least at one of these majors this year, a surprise package is going to emerge and put it up to him. But at the moment, it's hard to look past Rahm or Bryson. So Rahm, 14th at the Masters and then 8th at the PGA. But at the PGA, he was level. And you remember there was a putt which really should have dropped on 13. There was a bounce on that drivable par 4 14th, which was unlucky. And then he was very unlucky at the par 5 15th. So that tied 8 is a better tied 8 than it looked on paper. And then equally, there's Bryson, who can't hit an iron very well at the moment to the eye, but tied 5th at the Masters and co-runner-up at the PGA. Admittedly, 5 shots off, but still co-runner-up. Are you looking at those two, Brian? Is there anyone else which you're kind of banking on, or what do you see here?
Yeah, there's obviously those two guys, just playing so well. They've got all the power and the iron play in the world that you need. There's always sort of a magnolia play. The magnolia that blooms for sort of 4 days and bang, and it's gone. You got Andrew Landry, the last time, played in the final group with Shane Lowry, 648th in the world. He was in the final group here in 2016 when it was wet. He's now playing on the Corn Ferry Tour. I think he's 2,500 in the world or something like that around now. So who knows? There's going to be a springer from the pack, isn't there? I'm actually expecting Xander Schauffele. He's shown signs that he's, slowly getting back to, the kind of form we saw last year. Obviously, he won the PGA and the Open. I think he's slowly getting back to where he was last year. I think we're seeing. I think he'll be a lot closer this week than he has been in recent majors. And I think this is the type of course he's got loads of power. Great iron player and an exceptionally good putter. So I'd expect Schauffele to be up there with those guys, but I think the cream will eventually come to the top come sort of Saturday. I think by the time this place speeds up a little bit. It's going to be a bit of rain here and there, so it's not going to be as fast as the USGA might like, but there's plenty of ways to keep those scores down around par, with pin positions, etc. So and that rough is just growing and getting thicker with all this moisture we have around.
Yeah, Conor, your boy Ludwig Aberg is taking a turn, so he's not in great form.
No, he was the guy I thought. Well, I definitely thought he was going to win him. Well, sorry, I heavily fancied him for a major this year at the start of the year, and particularly at this one when ball striking is at such a premium. Putting the ball where you're intending to do it, particularly with your irons, and he is so good at that. But he's lost all semblance of form. Tommy Fleetwood is a fella I keep an eye out for this week.
He's had a few US Opens.
Yeah. I think he strikes the ball beautifully off the turf, and if he can put it far enough down the fairway off the tee, I think he'll have chances too.
Yeah. Is Bryson pretty much the most popular player on a property in the US these days, Brian, or who's number one?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're walking around here, and there's the dads are out with their kids, and Father's Day is coming up, and they're looking around for who we're going to go and watch, and where's Bryson? That's what I've heard. Just around the place, people looking at the app trying to find out where's Bryson on the golf course. They want to see Bryson. They want to see Rory as well. They're the guys they want to see, and that's just. He's box office, isn't he? Anybody can get up and just hit that ball so far, and he's so popular on YouTube and all that stuff as well. So he's extremely popular, and he's just a sensational player. I mean, I remember seeing him first 2015 US Amateur. I was coming back from a PGA in Whistling Straits, I think, and Olympia Fields in Chicago. Paul Dunn, he played Paul Dunn in the quarterfinals of the US Amateur and beat him, and you could sort of see then, this guy is a little bit special, and what his journey since then has been, phenomenal. The bulking up and the slimming down and all the controversies as well. So he certainly hasn't been has been boring. So I think people love to see somebody like Bryson DeChambeau. He's the guy a lot of people are here to see, and US Open champion, and he can keep it fairly straight. He has the power not to have to hit drivers too far. I mean, it's 7,200 yards. Okay, it's a par 70, so he'll be hitting a few driving irons and woods and fairway woods here and there. So I'd expect him to be up there definitely, and incredibly popular.
Okay, great. Listen, we had some technical problems. We'll pull the curtain back a touch. It took us a long time to get going. I appreciate the patience. We've taken up enough of your time. So thank you so much, and have a great week out there. Much obliged.
No problem, Joe. Thank you.
Brian Keogh there, who'll be at Oakmont all week, in the paper, online, videos, you name it. It's kind of in terms of a preview, it's a thoroughly predictable set list we've hit. Course is scary. Shane Lowry, McIlroy, Scottie's really good. Who can challenge him? Maybe Ram, maybe Bryson. It's just kind of that they're the obvious talking points to hit. How it plays out, we don't know, but that's kind of the vibe.
Well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the sort of excitement from watching these fellas struggle and lose their minds, or do you prefer like a Valhalla last year at the PGA when everyone was going out shooting 62?
I didn't enjoy Valhalla. No, that was too easy.
No.
There was no consequence to too many bad shots. The only thing I don't love about this course is all that thick rough around every green.
I don't think it looks great either. Like there's no water and there's no trees, and to the on television, to watch it doesn't we're
nondescript.
It's nondescript. We're always going back to Keogh Island because that looks so brilliant on the television.
Yeah.
I think you can forgive that a bit in the US Open because you know what it is a test. But I suppose as people who are kind of interested in golf and play a bit of it, a lot of the time you're sitting on a Sunday night watching television thinking, God, I'd love a crack at that place. And I would absolutely hate to have to play Oakmont.
Yeah. I think the average width of the fairways is 30 odd yards. I watched Dustin Johnson's final round back out of interest to see this, this course is scary as hell.
Yeah.
He just split every fairway.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
By the time you get to Saturday, Sunday and you have the players who are playing well, the course won't look that scary. And you'll be thinking, what was all the talk about? Thursday, Friday, you'll see its teeth. So I'm a fan, I think, even though it's unfair, of no graduated rough. So, I mean, me and you hit it 20 yards into the rough.
Same lie.
Scottie Scheffler hits it 3 yards into the rough. He ends up with the same horrible lie. So, I'm a fan of the pain that causes or the tension that causes on the tee. I don't find it, but from there on in, Is it my style of golf? No, because I don't really like watching guys chunk it out and run it up. It's boring. They're boring shots. You know, the reason the Masters is so great is sometimes there's a shot on when you're in the you know, there's something I can conjure up a bit of magic. I can work something. Whereas here it'll be, right, I gotta get a bit of loft on the club and just hack it up there. And then I don't love that the greens are surrounded by thick, heavy rough. Because I actually think, even though Lowry's gone well here, that obviously takes away the great skill that Lowry has.
Yeah,
because
true.
if me and you were in that thick stuff, right of the pin, right of the green, we're looking down, the ball's buried. There's a degree of like, okay, I'm going to open up the club face and just there's a bit of guesswork. And that sort of levels the field for me versus Shane Lowry.
Yeah.
Whereas if we were in like these Keogh or any number of courses where the run at Pinehurst, the runoff is brutal and it's Razor or Augusta, tight lie. Well, that's where like I'm blading it and Lowry's going, watch this.
Yeah. The only thing about it is like when you're at, it's funny, like if you're at Augusta and you can, when you're watching on television and you know,
Or were you in Augusta?
he's put it in the rough.
Yeah.
And then you're standing beside it and you're looking at the lie. And it's like it's better than most of the tee boxes anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
So the danger there is that, okay, I can't quite spin the ball. So on the quick green, it will hop off and not. Whereas what you have here now is almost an automatic one-shot penalty for hitting the rough.
That's what I don't like.
So you have to chunk out to the middle of the fairway.
And when I'm watching for 4 days every shot, as I try to do with these things, there is a degree with, he's in the rough. Right, I'm going to go make a coffee because I don't need to like watch him chunk it out of the rough. I don't need to see a second shot. I'll come back for his third shot. And like that times 72 holes, 70 odd players, that can get a little bit, got a thick lie here, Roger. He's going to chunk it up there with a 9-iron. So it's a little bit more one-dimensional, but I can appreciate, oh my God, how difficult it must be to score around here. So I can respect the quality required, but like, am I kind of, this is such an interesting shot like I am with the Masters? No.
Yeah, and I suppose it's a different way of winning a major too, because so Rory McIlroy, we watched him win at the Masters this year, and it was an amazing thing to watch his Sunday round. They will show that round forever. It was remarkable. But how many mistakes did he make? Like if he makes nearly the same number of mistakes,
12 over.
Yeah, he's gone this week because there's no recovery from that. That's the whole point. And not to be constantly drawing the same picture with everything we say, but who makes the least mistakes? Scottie Scheffler by a mile. Any kind of a mistake. And I think you're right in a way that takes away from it because Rory McIlroy was so good and Augusta is so nuanced and varied that even though he made lots of mistakes, he could compensate for them or make up for them in other ways. And I think here it will literally be a case of hit a fairway, hit a green, leg putt, take the odd birdie, and it's going to come down to consistency rather than anything else.
If you enjoy pars and regulation, this is this Saturday and Sunday for you. Yeah, no, it is. It's a slog, but again, once out of the year, fine by me. I will embrace the slogginess of it. But if that was golf routinely at majors, it would be a little bit heavy going. It is live on Sky Sports or Now TV. They of course sponsor our football coverage here as well. I mentioned, by the way, speaking of TV, Johnny Miller and his 63 at Oakmont, which is kind of, it is a disgrace that Ricky Fowler has that record now at LACC. It's just disgusting that 62 counts. That's like it worth a 67 at Oakmont. I was reminding myself of Johnny Miller's co-commentary. I think he is the best co-com there's been, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like by such a long way. Phil, 2010 Ryder Cup, Johnny Miller at one stage said, if Phil couldn't chip, he'd be selling cars in San Diego. Imagine, no one talks like this anymore. 2004, Craig Parry, who had an unconventional swing, cuts to Miller. If Ben Hogan saw that, he'd puke. Justin Leonard, 99 Ryder Cup, he needs to go home and watch this from television. And then Rocco Mediate, US Open, 08 against Tiger. He looks like the guy who cleans Tiger's pool.
Well, if you're ever on co-coms and I think if you've shot a 62 at Oakmont, you're emboldened to be able to say whatever you want.
Say what you want. Yeah. Alrighty. That's our preview. I think the review will be more fun because the preview is utterly predictable. There's not a single thing anyone has said here in the last 45 minutes that was that's surprising.
The only thing I could add to that is that it will be one of those, a lot of majors and a lot of golf tournaments, you're waiting for Sunday because you know that it is
positioning.
Yeah, but I think this is the one where things can go drastically wrong at any minute, irretrievably wrong. So that's why I think it'll be a really interesting watch.
Yeah. Like at least 3 players will lose their minds on the green.
Yeah.
You know, you will see some great reactions to 4 putts. There'll be a bit of that. Scottie or the field?
I'm taking Scottie, I think.
That's crazy.
What do you think?
I would never take anyone over the field. This is the thing. This is why Scottie's the most underappreciated sportsman in the world right now. Golf, you know, you play. The margins are infinitesimal. So it's not a sport where anyone should dominate. A field.
No, but this is the thing about Scottie Scheffler. This is why he's so good. It's that the case against him is basically the vagaries of tournament golf.
Yeah, an unlucky bounce.
Bounce. It's a big field.
But big field. And someone just, you know, the gap between 1 and 100 is not the same as it is in tennis. Someone can just catch fire, as Brian was alluding to, and bloom for 4 days. That is always, I'm always in favour of those odds, that someone catches fire. And someone on fire versus Scottie's B+ or A- game, that person on fire has a great chance.
Yeah. This is like fire for 4 days is hard to maintain.
Yeah.
Like, put it this way, if tournament golf was over 6 days as opposed to 4, I think Scottie Scheffler would win 4 times out of 5. Do you know what I mean?
Agreed.
Like, eventually his metronomic thing will overtake everybody nearly every single time. But you know, like, it's hard to see where things go wrong from. And the fact that he makes so few mistakes, and I hadn't heard that stat about the 62% of times he makes a bogey, makes a
67.
67.
It's insane.
So he makes no mistakes, and then when he does, he gets a birdie on the next hole.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary.
It is, yeah. Okay, I guess we'll see. Rory holding putts, interesting. That makes you feel good. It doesn't matter how you're playing. If you're holding putts, you feel good.
Yeah.
And he just needs to feel good to play good sometimes. So that you know, him, Lowry, Justin Rose.
Yeah. So what you're saying is
chance. Okay, that is us for the US Open. We will review, I suspect, on Monday or Tuesday, depending on winner and everything else going on. Thanks again to Brian Keogh. We spent a long time trying to get his headphones working. 45 minutes. We were just me and you sitting in silence in the studio for 45 minutes. But it was a pleasure. Conor McKeon, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
All right.